Welcome once again to Five Little Stones. Today I have a special guest, and he's going to show us in the ways of success and direction. He's going to talk to us about goals and all kinds of magic. So stick around. My guest today is Jeremy Garcia. A little bit about him. He's a first-generation non-day laborer, 25 years leadership experience, worked in over 15 different industries. He's a business owner, licensed pilot. You didn't tell me that. We have to fly out sometime. Licensed representative in U.S. securities and derivatives, MBA undergraduate in marketing and IT, candidate of Master of Liberal Arts in Industry Organizational Psychology at Harvard University Extension School, hip hop quoter extraordinaire, follower of the force. I give you Jeremy Garcia. Welcome, Jeremy. I'm so glad to see you.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, no, so, I'm going to just jump right in. I'm really excited about hearing your success stories and how what you have to share can help anyone that might be watching this right now, either on their own personal success or their families or whatever they might be facing. I'm really interested in hearing your perspective because we've known each other for, I like to say, decades now, which sounds like a lot, but I think it's factual. And we've grown a lot. So I'm super excited to share your information with my audience and help them out because money and success and goals and career, it's also important in people's lives. So tell us a little bit about, who is Jeremy Garcia? What motivates you? What is your why, your goals? Just let us have it, man.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for that introduction. So before I kind of go down that path, I want to say that, success looks different for everybody. Things that you and I talk about today may be, individualized to our own experiences, and other people may not be able to, have those same exact experiences. But some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today, they're probably going to be repetitive. So I don't know if I'll be dropping any nuggets of, really solid information. It's really kind of just reiterating things that people probably have heard before. And that's because these 8 things that I'm planning to kind of talk about, they're everywhere. It doesn't matter what industry you're a part of, how long you've been in that industry, whether it's a public organization that you work for or a private organization. It basically are the same, competencies that you necessarily need to kind of just be successful in general. So kind of just want to start with that there. That way people don't think that they're about to get, a life-changing experience here. But kind of like you said, humble beginnings. My mom was a first generation, laborer. She actually quit junior high to go pick fruits and vegetables in the fields and whatnot. And my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was a dishwasher, blue collar type things, taking jobs where they could. So didn't have a whole lot growing up, and basically kind of seeing my parents go through what they went through. Both ended up injured because of their jobs very, very, early in life. So they had the forced retirement. So kind of seeing what they went through, having the money issues and whatnot, I kind of just decided that, they made these sacrifices for me. So I had to make sure that I maximized every opportunity that I could. So for me, my why is kind of just making sure that their sacrifices weren't made in vain. Plus, for me, and me, like you said, we've known each other for years. For me, I personally get a kick out of being told I can't do something. It's happened my entire life, but my father told me that I wasn't going to amount to nothing. My school teachers told me I was going to amount to nothing. You and I've worked with managers who have told me that I am bad for the corporate environment. And, now, we're here. As you said, I've got 25 years of leadership experience. I've worked in 15 different industries. I've been recruited for a lot of companies to come and fix their problems. And my business that I have is exactly doing that, is helping people take a look at the problems, face them, and overcome them. So, these things, regardless of what people tell you, it's not solidified in stone. You know, every single one of us have choices to make, and those choices can pay off. And, you know, here I am talking to you. You know, I'm part of an organization in finance that I love. I've now moved to California, in the Bay Area, love this area, and I'm going to Harvard Extension. So it's like either I'm doing something wrong, or, you know, I've been lied to by quite a few people. And honestly, whatever your take is, here we are, and I'm trying to make the most out of it. So, so the first thing for me, I think that when it comes to success is confidence. Like, and I think that we've all heard this, that no one will believe you until you believe in yourself first. And you can hear people's confidence in their voice. So like, you know, when you're in a job interview and you don't know how to answer a question, or you don't know what they're asking, or if you're on the phone, you know, if your job is being on the phone and you're being asked a question that you don't know the answer to, or even a face-to-face conversation, when you don't feel confident, people can see that. And that can definitely lead to a lot of different, you know, paths. But when you are confident, people can also see that as well, but they hone in on that and they gravitate towards that. And you know, being confident in oneself is super key. And some of the ways that I've kind of got myself to where my level of confidence is at, is number one is holding myself accountable. And you know, let's kind of talk about that for a quick second. You know, we've come up in a time and place where you hear someone say, "I'm going to hold you accountable." It's got a negative connotation, right? It just sounds like I'm in trouble. But that's not how that word was defined. That's not how that word was built. So that's a falsehood that we've moved forward with. The word accountable is very balanced. So how I kind of tell my people, my employees or people that I'm working with, is think of accountability from two perspectives. The first perspective is hold yourself accountable for where you are at in life. You and you alone have gotten you to this point in life with your decisions, with your actions. Sure, you may have gotten feedback, or you've read some books, or you've learned some things along the way, and regardless of what your environment was, but it was ultimately your decisions that you moved forward with and got you to this point. There's still a level of success in that, regardless of how you feel about it. Hold yourself accountable to that. Be proud of where you're at in that time and place at any given moment, because you got yourself there and you did it by yourself. So the reason why you have to do that is because of that obvious other side. Is the other side you have to hold your accountable self to is the opportunities that you have, your weaknesses, things that you need to continue building at. And how you do that is by taking those strengths that you are aware of and use them to build your opportunities, which is the next thing, to the next key to confidence. You have to know what you're good at, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you're not so good at. There's no shame in calling yourself out and saying, I am not good at public speaking, or I am not good at math, or I am not good at presentations. You know, whatever the case is, as long as you are being honest with yourself, that's a starting point. Okay. When it comes to like hip hop, like I told you, I love quoting hip hop. But one of my favorite quotes is from a rapper named Common, and that quote is, "Knowing when you're weak is when you're really being strong." It takes a lot out of someone to admit when they need help with something, right? So being able to admit, "Hey, I am not so good at this," it shows yourself and it opens up to the world that you're willing to fill those skill gaps with whatever information may come your way. And, you know, with that being said, you know, you still are able to, you know, as humans, we tend to be our own biggest critics. No one else out there can criticize us more than we criticize ourselves. And sometimes we criticize ourselves to a point that it actually makes us feel negative about it. But again, that's where that accountability comes in, right? You've got to keep it balanced. Be critical of yourself, but also be your own advocate. No one has seen what you've overcome. No one has seen how you've done it. No one has seen your full, true struggle. So if you're not giving yourself the credit for what you've already accomplished, how do you know that what you're working towards is going to even be met when you haven't even looked at the milestones that you've already passed. So you got to have that balanced mentality. You know, being confident, it makes you feel a certain way, that it makes things like learning and having conversations with people about topics that you're not really familiar with, it makes it easier, because when you're confident, you tend to speak up for yourself more. So, you know, another saying that I like to say is, a closed mouth does not get fed. And if you are true with yourself about your strengths, and you ask and you know what your weaknesses are, and you're comfortable with that, you're going to ask people who are professionals in that, who are skilled in that, for help. You're going to say, what have you done? What are some things that I can try? Or you're going to ask questions and say, hey, listen, you're teaching me this. This doesn't make sense. If you keep your mouth shut, those questions are going to remain. Your knowledge is going to remain stagnant. And when your knowledge is stagnant, your confidence dips again. So it's a vicious cycle that people can kind of fall back into. So, you know, just making sure that if you really want to be successful, first and foremost, you got to make a decision to be confident and give yourself, you know, the powers and the kudos that you should, along with giving yourself the criticism. It's not all about focusing on the negative, because focusing on the negative isn't going to serve one positive.
And you know what? I like a few things that you mentioned, and I like to interject here just to drive them home. The first one, defining success, and you said it perfectly, that is different for everyone. And I learned that at an early age, and the examples that helped me understand that was a few different people that were successful in their own way. And I'll just give you two examples for time's sake. Walt Disney and Mother Teresa. Maybe, I can't think of a name, but a millionaire, right? Another person that made a lot of money. So these three examples, they're all successful, but completely different. Because for Walt Disney, although he did build an empire and all that, but his success was he wanted to build, like, what is it called, the happiest place on earth. So his goal was like to bring happiness to the kids and the cartoons and his stories. So that was his why, what driven. But then Mother Teresa, like, there's nothing further apart from money than what she had to face every day. Like, she was helping people in extreme poverty with illnesses and not gaining any monetary reward for it. But her why was in loving just humans and just being amazing. Like, I really admire her, because it takes a lot out of a person, and for a person to be able to do that. So it's a great example for me and inspiration. And then a millionaire, obviously, you know, there's a lot of pluck and luck, but also preparedness to make money and do it ethically. So those are different examples of success. But you also mentioned that saying, well, what I'm going to be sharing is the same information a lot of people probably already heard or whatnot. But let me tell you something. I could hear the same piece of information from a different person and just from a different perspective, and it opens up my eyes. Because sometimes you've heard this phrase, and it happens usually within family. Like, I don't know, my mom would have told me this specific thing, like, you need to do this, this, and this. So I got it, I know, whatever. But it didn't really hit home. But then I heard another person say it just in a different way, and like, now I get it. So, you know, that's why it's important. And I'm super excited that you're sharing your knowledge and your experience, because one of the things you also mentioned is you have to know what you're good at, what you're not, and when you need help, ask for help. And that's what I'm doing.
Right.
I think I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at, or what I'm ignorant of. So that's where I also ask for help. I invite special guests like yourself, that you're an expert on those topics that I might not be as familiar with, because that way you can share that information with the audience and they can get it firsthand without me having to learn it first and then figure it out and then No, you have years of experience, so you are, you own that information, and it's easier to share something that you've lived and experienced than something that you just read or heard or whatnot. And also, I know you like hip hop, but I'm gonna date myself. The only really hip hop I used to listen to when I was young was Eazy-E and NWA, and I can't even like sing those lyrics. So I don't know a lot of references other than that. But I love it that, one of the things I like about our friendship and about you is that we're authentic. Like, you're authentic. You like rap or hip hop, like, you're not hiding it. Like, it's part of you. And like me, I like Star Wars. Everybody knows about it. And people make fun of me because I'm a geek. Like, I don't care, but I'm honest. I really enjoy it, and I get a kick out of Baby Yoda and all that stuff. So I think that's huge. And I just wanted to mention those things because I think you're making some good points. And I like the confidence and also do the self-assessment. What else do you think is important? Because you mentioned there's different steps. Those would be the first two, I believe. What will be the next step that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, so kind of you kind of mentioned something I kind of want to touch on. So, like, success is different for everybody, and how an individual defines success is pretty vast, right? The definition can be super robust, and what people kind of downplay are the negative things that led to those successes, the failures, right? And that's kind of important, because the failures, that is the learning path. That's where you are picking up the skills. That's where you're picking up the knowledge. And when people hear the word failure, it makes them feel a certain way, right? It's kind of like when you say Mufasa, like, ooh, say it again. But with failure, you have to get yourself to a place where it's comfortable. You have to get to a place where you learn to love the failure. You don't go and purposely set out to fail. Because if you go and purposely set out to fail and you failed, guess what you just did? You didn't fail. You succeeded at it, right? So it defeats that purpose. But falling in love with the failure, it helps downplay those negative emotions that we as humans attach to certain tasks in our lives. And when we can downplay those emotions and tell our amygdala to just chill out and let the left side of our brain kind of do the driving, we can bounce back from those things very quickly. So, when it comes to, failures, it's okay to spend a few, moments in that negativity, in that dark cloud, and have yourself an F-bomb session. I do it all the time, all the time. Of course, disclosure, don't do it in a professional setting because you put yourself at risk. Not saying I had to learn that lesson the hard way, but it's still a lesson that you don't want to learn. So you gotta be in the right mindset. When things happen and they don't go the way that you expect, you can have those moments of your cursing and whatnot, but immediately pull yourself out of it. And what I mean by that is, think about the positives. And the positives, what I mean by it is really the silver lining of those things. And that's a phrase I actually got from someone in the place that you and I used to work at, someone who I used to work for. And they always looked at the silver lining, and it annoyed me profusely. But as I've kind of grown in my career, I've realized like that looking at the positive line, it has its benefits. So, like, for example, say you were trying to meet a particular goal, and it's a numbers goal, right? And it's the end of the month. Say it's a sales goal, and you're 3 or 4 sales short from that goal, and you don't meet that goal. Did you succeed? No, you didn't. You failed. Boo-hoo. Look at why you failed. Understand why you failed. Analyze that. Detach the emotional part and get scientific with it. Take a look at the sales that you didn't succeed at. What were some of the things that you could have changed in those moments? What are some of the things you could have said, the tactics that you could have used? Because if you go and take a look and see how you played it and what didn't work, you know what not to use again, or at least not to use in that same exact scenario. You have to go back and analyze and kind of reverse engineer what happened to fully understand those things. And you can't truly do those with a clear mind from a logical perspective if you're still caught up in those negative emotions. So, for me, be confident, fall in love with that failure, because the more you love failure, when it happens, instead of wasting time, groveling at defeat, you're going to get yourself back up and you're going to say, okay, again, how can I overcome what I just did? Is there an easier way to do this, or do I have to go around, above, or underneath this obstacle to reach my goal? So that's the next thing, detach and desensitize. The more you can feel comfortable in that space of failing, the stronger you're going to be at building your successes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And, two things came to mind with what you just shared. The first one is when you're talking about those people that are successful, it brought to my memory when you're looking at a documentary or a movie inspired by a famous athlete or a famous person, whatever. The whole spin that they usually give it is that this person was great, was a musician, an actor, whatever, like an athlete. Like, this person was amazing and he or she is the greatest of all times. And they make you think like, well, this person was born like that, and they've been great forever and they will always be, and that's because they're awesome. That's why they achieved all these things. But what you don't really think about is all these people were regular people just like you and I, and they had challenges, they had upsets, and when they even play those in the movie, it's like, well, they didn't believe in this person, but obviously he was amazing, so he overcame. Well, because we know the ending of the story, but when you haven't taken that step, you're in that moment where you're being rejected, you're being looked down on. Like, how do you know? You can't think, well, that happened to those people, but not me because they're great and I'm not. You can't have that. I can think of two examples that are a perfect display of this story. The first one would be Michael Jordan, the alleged best basketball player of all times. And people think of him, oh yeah, he's the greatest. And well, yeah, he succeeded and won all these championships because he's Michael Jordan. Like, he was already amazing. But if you look at it, and I think he even shares the story, in high school, he wasn't even selected for the basketball team. Like, he was I can imagine myself being, rejected. If that's my life, I'm passionate about basketball, and no, you didn't make the team. Like, that would have destroyed me, But that's where he's great, that he's facing these challenges and he's overcoming all that pushback and all that resistance, and he's finding a way to still rise above. Now, another one, which I think is going to show a little bit of my geek side, is George Lucas. He went with his little movie to all the major companies and told them, hey, I have this movie, here's the script, blah, blah, blah. And they all rejected him. Like, nah, nope, this stinks. Nobody's ready for this stuff. Like, what are you talking about? What? It's space? And he was completely shut down until he didn't give up. He kept pursuing until eventually, Fox picked it up and it just blew up.
Right.
Which, is the greatest movie of all time. Side note.
Right. Even Fox thought it was going to be a failure, that they let him have all the merchandising rights. And after it blew up in their face, they're like, guess who just made a mistake? Us. And, they've learned from that. And that's why they have their hand in all of the merchandising since. So to your point, bringing up George Lucas, we're both really huge Star Wars fans. And I'm a huge fan of quotes, and there's always been a quote that once I actually understood it from Star Wars, it blew my mind, and it's actually a quote that I move forward with, and I probably will to the day I die, and that's do or do not. there is no try. When you actually break that down, it doesn't even talk about failure, right? It says either you are going to accomplish something or you're not going to accomplish something. You didn't try to do it, you did it, but you didn't complete it. And when you kind of think that actually applies to literally almost everything in life, like you kind of have that different perspective, because people have a fear of failure. People have a fear of having those feelings. But if they can figure out how to, in their head, minimize those emotions and take the power away from those emotions, they're going to be able to focus and use all of that energy to looking at things from a different perspective. So like next time someone, whoever's watching this, the next time you don't succeed at something, use that statement, apply to it, see if it fits. Do or do not. Did you or did you not succeed? And if you did not, there's lessons in that you can just take a deep breath, understand, and when you go about it again, you will be that much closer to succeeding, or you have already surpassed where that line was. So, that's a great example that you brought up, man. So I thank you for doing that, because Star Wars for me was that really cool sci-fi fantasy thing. But like, for me, I didn't have a whole lot of people like using some like really hot quotes that just made me think about things. And Star Wars for me kind of was like that thing for me. It was that entity that just kept feeding me all these perspectives of things that I can kind of take a look at and then decide, do I want to go down this rabbit hole and decide that I really want to learn why this quote resonated with me or not? And that whole set of movies has just really helped out. And honestly, it also is a segue to the next thing that I think that I tell people that they should use and think about for becoming successful. And that's, no matter where you are in life, whether you're single and don't have children, or you're married and you have kids and you've got a career and everything's going, but you have to decide to be a continuous learner if you want to continuously be successful. Time never stops. Technology never stops. Information never stops. But for some reason, we as humans stop taking in information. We stop learning about technology. We stop growing within ourselves. And when that happens, and when those choices to be stagnant have finally caught up to us, we question everything like, why am I not getting these opportunities? We start playing the victim role a lot more. Whereas someone who decides to learn more about technology, someone who watches the news, someone who reads books and looks at other people's perspectives on things and whatnot, they're constantly owning that information. They're understanding it. They're learning from it. They're trying to see how they can make that information work for them. So for me, a lot of people, when I've told them you got to be a continuous learner, they say, but hey, you know what, Jeremy, it's easier said than done. You're a single guy. You don't have any kids. Like, you got all the time in the world. Okay, maybe, but I'm also a full-time student. I also own my own business. I also try to, get into creative things as well and help other people learn and grow, just because I like being part of people who are doing solid things with their life. And it doesn't matter how much time you have or you don't have. Being a continuous learner can mean many different things. It can feel like many different hats. Being a continuous learner could be just learning a new recipe, learning how to cook something you've never cooked before, learning how, to use a different method in cooking, or learning how to write poetry, or, writing nowadays, now that everything's opening back up due to COVID, you got these places where you can go painting, and even though you've never painted before, they show you how to do the brush strokes and all this other stuff. Or you can get yourself involved in like we all did during COVID, planting, taking care of plants. So learning could take on many different ways. You just got to be open to it. You got to stop making excuses and understand that If you want to progress in any way, shape, or form, it comes with a sacrifice or an investment, if you will. And that investment is time and attention. The more time and attention you can give to something, as long as you're doing it correctly, it should have residuals that are being paid to you on a constant basis, that you are using those residuals to invest somewhere else so you as an individual can grow. A lot of people are like, that's all well and great, Jeremy. I can learn how to cook. I can do that with my kids, and I can, help them with their homework and learn how to do the new age math and all this other stuff. But for me as an individual, learning costs money. I 100% agree. I'm putting myself through school right now. I know the cost of that. I've also paid for my MBA and all that other stuff myself. I get it. But there's all sorts of free resources. We live in the information age. The day and age of excuses, unfortunately, has ended. Anything that we want to learn about can get to us within milliseconds with just a few types of, of the keyboard there, and putting down the right search. And if you're not motivated to just type a few keys on a keyboard to get started, why are you even in the race? I mean, honestly, if you are not motivated to get started, I'm going to repeat that. Why are you in the race? If you are just an obstacle, why are you getting mad that people are going over you, going around you, going underneath you, and some are going to try to go through you? You have to keep learning to make sure that you don't end up being that obstacle. And again, there's free resources. And, for some people like, hey, you can't believe everything that you read off the internet. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But there's also free resources out there that students like myself who go to an Ivy League school use every single day to do our research and to write our papers. Everyone has access to this information. So, for example, a really good one is Google Scholar. All of the articles that you will see in that avenue are all peer reviewed. There's science behind it. There's numbers behind it. There's actual facts that you can go and verify from other resources and whatnot and learn from. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things out there. But again, one of the biggest decisions that one person can make for themselves is committing to being a lifetime continuous learner. The more that you absorb, I haven't met a single person who has learned too much in their lives that it's become a negative thing. And I would think that anyone out there would be hard pressed to find someone who's just constantly eating away at information, and they know so much information that it's gotten themselves in trouble. So, that's the next thing is, be a lifetime learner. Because see, that also ties to the next thing. And this is something that you and I were talking about. You could either be ready for what comes, or again, another rap quote, like the homeboy Skill has said, if you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail. I'll repeat that again. If you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail. If you are not ready to move on a moment's notice to the next thing, then you don't understand that in order to be successful, you have to be ready to pivot at any given time. Before we got started here, you and I were talking about some of the changes that we've experienced in our lives. So, two of the things that I mentioned before we got started was I was a director at an organization, and it got bought by another organization. And that other organization said, hey, we're sorry, but this is how business works. We need to get rid of some people at the top. Bye, Jeremy. So I got kicked out. I then moved to another organization, did for them what I promised. And when I did that, and as soon as I got completed, within a year's time, I got let go again. That time I got told, we no longer need your type of leadership. And it's like, Had I not been ready, I would have been completely floored, completely devastated. But because I continuously learn, because I ask questions that I have on my mind, because I am okay with falling flat on my face, I was able to get up quickly. I was able to pivot quickly. That's how I've changed, and that's why I've changed industries more than 15 times. A long time ago, I read this article from Harvard Business Review. It was in the early 2000s, and basically the point of it was for people that were in their 20s or going into the 30s at that time. If it basically said, if you choose to stay in the same role that you were in for more than 3 years, you are literally signing up to throw away 50% of your future income. 50%. So of course, me at that age, I'm just like, I was all about the money then, I that's all I cared about. I was by myself and I liked going out. So that's what I wanted. So I thought about that. And that's what led me to constantly change my careers or at least roles. Because again, it said if you stayed in the same role for 3 years, and you saw when we worked at that one place where we paid to discover things, you saw me move from department to department to department. And it was because of that mindset. I wanted to stay in an organization, build my network, but I wanted to do it while also filling my pockets. So, that's why you have to, put it all together and be ready to pivot because things happen at that same place that I just mentioned. That organization took the TARP funds. As soon as it took those government funds because of everything that was going down with the 2008 crash, they laid off 500 of the most important people to that organization. You remember that? Those people, they didn't know it was coming. They had an inclination, but they didn't know it was coming. They lost their whole livelihood, places that they've dedicated their lives to, overnight, gone just like that. I've worked at for-profit schools that I knew going in, it was a sinking ship. But I paid attention to the creaks that I was hearing while I was on that ship. And when I saw certain parts of the ship fall off, I knew certain things were going to happen. But people who weren't paying attention, they didn't know it was going to happen. And at that organization, I saw 8 layoffs, 8 different layoffs. And ironically, when I left that organization, they actually tried to lay me off right after I actually quit. They sent me the paperwork and everything saying, we're really sorry it came to this. And I had to correct them and say, hey, it didn't. I quit on you. But the signs were all the same. And I'm not saying that you can get to a point where you can predict the future because nothing's ever guaranteed and you're never going to have all the bits and pieces of information. But if you can navigate, and I think most of our parents probably told us this, learn to expect the unexpected. If you can actually get to that place where you can see the writing on the wall, because let's be honest, and you and I probably learned this at that same place that I keep going back to where we learned so much about the corporate environment. All of the walls have ears, and those ears are attached to mouths. And there's always going to be this chitter chatter everywhere, right? And that chitter chatter will let you believe in something that's not even going to happen. And it's going to shake you and it's going to cause you all this stress and whatnot because we as humans, we're afraid of change. It's just not in our nature. And I don't know if you remember the books that they let us read in those environments that we were in, but one that changed my world forever was Who Moved My Cheese. Do you remember that one? So, Who Moved My Cheese? It's a simple book, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's like 50, 60 pages, super fast read, big print. It's essentially about change, and it's about these characters in a maze where some of the characters are like, one day they wake up and their food source is gone. Instead of sitting there and waiting for the food source to come back, they go out searching for it. While there's these other two characters, one's like, should we leave? I think we should probably go leave. The other one's like, nah, it's coming back. There's no way it's not coming back. And they stay. And then, their story kind of goes, down the paths that you would expect. But it helped teach me to never get comfortable. Because a lot of people pre-COVID was all about job security. Everyone's about job security. But for me, someone in my experience, I don't know what job security feels like. I've never felt it myself. I've always been in roles where either my role was at risk or people close in my circle were at risk. This is the first organization that I'm currently at right now where I don't feel that way, but that's because we're in a building stage right now. Depending on what stage of your organization's at, the feelings could be very different. Like I'm saying, there's no way to predict the future and whatnot. But the point is, if you can prepare, if you're always ready for those next steps, like some of the things we've probably heard is always keep your resume updated. It's not just because, you'll forget to update your resume. It's because in business, stuff happens. And what would you rather focus on when that stuff actually happens? Rewriting your resume so it's polished, or actually going and finding your next opportunity? I would rather waste my time looking for my next opportunity. And I didn't mean the word waste. I mean, go find my next opportunity. I wouldn't want to sit there and try to reformat my resume just for one particular instance when I could keep it polished 24/7, have it ready for anybody. So always being ready for that next pivot, whether it's a forced pivot or a planned pivot, is never going to hurt you. It's never going to hurt you. Now, with that, you have to be very fair-minded with that. You can know how to pivot, but if you don't set goals for yourself, which is the next thing that I think is super important for everyone, it doesn't matter how big of a goal, how small a goal. If you don't have something that you're working towards, again, why are you wasting your time? What is it that you're doing that's going to benefit you if you don't have a goal in mind? So it's like, for example, saying, I am going to go get a job as a burger flipper. I'm going to go get a job as a burger flipper. And I don't want to, try to go get an executive chef job, even though I have the skill set. I just want to go and be a burger flipper. Being a burger flipper isn't going to help me in any way, shape, or form. I already know how to be a gourmet chef. The only thing my working at a lower task is going to be those customers are going to be like, yo, these are the tastiest burgers in town. But that's only going to equate to a 15-cent raise in my paycheck in my annual review somewhere down the road if the smiling clown says I can get a promotion. I mean, honestly, you have to make sure that there's a goal that's going to be able to build you. You want to have goals, and you got to think about these goals on different echelons. A lot of people like, well, my goal is to be a hairdresser. Okay, that's a great goal. So here's the end, right? Here, your goal is to be a hairdresser, but there's all this time and space for you to get to being a hairdresser. What are those little short-term goals that you're going to set for yourself to know that you're going down the right path to become that hairdresser, to become that makeup artist, or even to become that next hip hop star? What are the things that you're doing to progress that are going to lead to that point? And then the cycle repeats, because once you become that, you now have to figure out, how do you stay relevant? And guess what? You stay relevant by learning, by speaking up for yourself, by being confident. all the things that I just got done saying, that's how you set those next goals. It's all about building. It's like Lego. You just put one block on top of the other, and you figure out somewhere down the road where it's going to go. I mean, does that make sense?
You know, definitely. And what I like is that sometimes us as human beings, we think of a task or a goal or even a way to get there, like, you know, the advice that you're giving us about confidence and all these different points. But especially nowadays that we're in such a society where everything is, and I can't think of the word, but disposable, I think is the correct word. Like nowadays, if you buy a TV and it starts acting up, you throw it away. Like you don't even bother trying to fix it. Back in the day when I was a kid, like if it was acting up, like you send it to get repaired. So it was a different culture, different mentality. But nowadays, this is translating also to our behaviors and our patterns. And what I like is that you're hitting or bringing it home where have confidence is not, doesn't have a expiration date. Like it's not like, okay, you're confident at first, but once you're confident, then you forget about that because now you start doing this and then you forget about this and then you never go back to it. No, on the contrary. Yeah, you do this, this helps you get here. But then when you get here, guess what? You can use this again and you keep recycling them and reusing them. They're not throwaway. They're not a one-time wonder thing. It's skills that you're going to constantly be using. And as you were sharing some stories about that company we both shared some time at, you know, I have an example of my personal experience that kind of fits in what you've been talking about, especially in failure and the asking for help and identifying, okay, why did you fail and fixing it or deciding to wanting to do it first of all. And I'll share real quick. First of all, my position was being on the phones and collecting money, which that was one of my least favorite jobs because I couldn't go home and just leave work home. I still remember all these horror stories and bad experiences throughout the day. I couldn't shake it. But I was struggling in the beginning. And my boss, like, I think I got written up because, and I'll paraphrase, but pretty much what I was told is, you know, I don't get it. You're amazing on the phone. All your quality assurance scores are the top of the team. Like you're on time. You're, you know, you're a great employee, but you're not collecting the money. So like many companies, it's about the money. If you're not hitting the goals or you're making your quota, you're not in the game, right? So it starts downhill from there. And so, like I said, I think I got written up, and so my boss like shared those news with me and put me on this performance plan or whatever. But just what I feel and what I think looking back, it's okay. I'm just gonna start putting him through, you know, the motions and get rid of him because he's not collecting the money that I want my team members to collect. So I was going down that path and I felt it. But little did you know, a coach in our team, and I can't remember if it was team lead, so it was from the supervisor, it was the helper. But this person, for whatever reason, took a special interest in me because they saw that I was a good employee. Like I said, I was on time, I was respectful. I did everything right. The only problem I had was that I was not hitting the goal. I was missing it by a little bit, but I was missing it. So I'm so thankful that this person took the time and started studying my failure and, you know, sat down with me and did side by side, and not with the intention to just, you know, badger me and just blast my ear and just give me a hard time or just be mean or no. He actually had a legitimate interest in my success for whatever reason. Like And like I said, I'm thankful for that because of this person, I kept my job. And
Right.
what he discovered is that, you know what? You're doing everything perfect. There's not a problem with you. The only thing we need to do is make your calls shorter. That was the secret. So, instead of spending time on wishing them a good day and this and that, he started making some adjustments, and that's going to shave off a little bit of time out of your calls. And that means you're going to get an extra 10 calls a day or 15 calls a day. And it's a numbers game, and you're doing everything right. So I'm not worried about you collecting or doing your thing. I'm just going to give you a strategy to allow you to get more calls in an hour than you did before. And that's going to reach the target that we're looking for. And sure enough, it was like magic. First of all, I was coachable. I really reacted positively to the positiveness that this person came with, because I don't know, sometimes if somebody is negative and they're just badgering you, even if you can do it or you want to do it, there's a struggle, right? But no, this was a very positive mentor, and it got me out of that write-up, and it got me making money, and soon I was top of my team. And that opened the doors to more career opportunities and advanced within the company and later on elsewhere. Right. So I think that's a perfect example of, finding failure, but not just feeling sorry for yourself or whatever, feeling the victim and blaming stuff, like being accountable, but also being accountable of the positive things that you were doing well, those you don't want to change, and having somebody with that interest to help me identify the challenges and with the experience to find the solution. And I think in a nutshell, that's what you're trying to share with us. And unfortunately, sometimes you're not going to have that mentor that's going to be there.
Right.
But you can be your own mentor sometimes. And sometimes you have to be. Wouldn't you agree?
100% of the time you have to be. Yeah, 100% of the time you have to be. And let me kind of just reverse back here and kind of offer a different perspective. You mentioned that the only reason why you kept that job was because of that individual. I disagree. The only reason why you kept that job was because of you. You decided that what they're prescribing, I'm going to implement. I can take what they're teaching me, and they're teaching me in such a way, I now comprehend how I can, being who myself is to the fullest, I can now get on the phones, accomplish the same thing in a smaller time frame, and not take away from who I am as an individual. That wasn't the person who helped you. And I think I know who you're talking about. That what you're referring to is leadership versus management, right? This person was being a leader in that moment, a servant leader to be exact. But in those instances, they honed in on an educational gap that they identified, and they helped you fill it in such a way that basically you were able to take what they were teaching you, turn it into your own, and move forward. I call that, because of my love of it, the hip hop method. Here's why I call it the hip hop method. Here's some fun defining for you. The reason why it's called hip hop is because in the late 70s, early 80s, as you know, Kool Herc and all of them and NYC were getting things popping, they would be at these parties DJing, right? And then they found the break beats and they started making these cuts, and the rhythm just kept going and kept going. And while that rhythm was going, people would get on the microphone and be like, yo, Joey, your car's about to get towed. Or, hey, blah, 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 your boy or your girl just left with so-and-so. So they started using that free time in the music to share knowledge, right? And then it started getting into this rhythmic fashion where people were rhyming on it, and they were like, oh, okay. But the whole premise why it was started to be called hip hop, because hip was acquiring the knowledge of what was going around in your environment, and the hop was physically doing something with it. So it's called hip hop. So when I teach people, my expectation that I tell them, whatever I teach you, and this goes for your audience as well, take whatever we're saying, understand that the way that we are putting it down 100% may not work for you. Your job, if these bits and pieces of information are worth something to you, you have to decide to pick up these pieces of information and mold it into whatever you need it to be. You have to make it work for you, because what works for me doesn't work for you, and what works for you isn't going to work for the next guy. So you got to, be open to taking this information and doing exactly what you did in that moment. You decided, I have a need that I need to continue to fill. And in order for me to do that, I need to present certain things. Part of that was that performance. You were taught something in such a way that you were able to pick it up, and then you were able to emulate it in the same way, just different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that still kind of fit your example?
I think it does perfectly. And I like the hip and the hop, and not just a rhyme, but the hop meaning, hop to it, take some action. So
right.
It's amazing, because there's a lot of knowledge that can be explained in a very simple way, but sometimes we just want to hear all the difficult big words and make it more complicated than it has to be. And
right.
Like that lady on the memes, like, there ain't nobody got time for that. like show me the bottom line, like what is it, like the message that I need to understand, and all the other fluff, like some of it might still be useful or not, but if I can really narrow down the important part, that's where the money's at, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Some people need the fluff. Some people need the fluff. I am not someone who needs the fluff. So when I am having a conversation with someone that needs the fluff, it takes me out of my comfort zone, because I'm very poignant. I'm to the point, and at sometimes, depending on the conversation, it might feel like I'm accidentally punching you in the throat. Not intentionally, but those people that need the fluff, that's where it comes to that part of, you have to speak up. You have to be your own advocate, because there's people out there like me that just want to treat everything like a robbery. I want to get in and get out and move on to the next thing. But if you need me to provide you more information, I need you to speak up. I need you to tell me how I need to produce information to you in such a way so you can devour it and move forward like we're all here and how we all intend for you to move forward with. And if someone just stays quiet, I'm going to continue my conversation the way that I normally do. And at the end of the conversation, you're going to be smiling, nodding your head with a smile, thinking, what the hell just happened to me? And then there goes your confidence. You're going to feel worse about the situation. And now you're not choosing the right attitude. And now you're going down the wrong path when you had the opportunity to actually obtain your goals quicker than veering off the path and now having to go a different way around it. And that actually, again, you're setting me up for success here, bro. But the next thing that I think is really important, and this actually was probably, and you were witness to this, this was probably my biggest lesson that I've had to learn in my entire career. And some people may disagree with me on that, and that's totally cool. We don't need to agree on this particular topic, but from my experience, there's a little secret that I want to share with everyone. And that is everything, literally everything, when it comes to your relationships with other humans, it's all politics. Stop pretending that it's not. Full stop. Stop pretending that we aren't playing this game of pull and tug, whether intelligently or unintelligently. Everything that we say and do has a purpose. And we know what that purpose is. So the one thing one of the main reasons why I say this is important for people to learn, and like I said, this was a huge lesson for me. One of the biggest opportunities that I had that people were very clear to tell me, in that environment where you and I met was that I was talking too strongly. It wasn't the ideas behind what I was saying. It was how I was saying it that was making them feel defeated. It was making them feel a certain way that they automatically disengaged. And because they automatically disengaged, that wholeheartedly got in the way of me progressing down a certain career path to where I was leading people. Now, granted, and ironically, it eventually led to a path where I was the guy who wrote all the policy and procedures that people had to actually follow and pay attention to. But even in that role, it was hard for me to get the buy-in from certain people and certain other members of leadership because of the memories that they had of how Jeremy communicated. So what the first lesson I learned was others people's perception, it's powerful and it is power. What people think of you in a business environment can be helpful, but it can also be dangerous to your career. In that institution or other institutions, if people work with you and then leave somewhere else, and then they earn the trust of other people, and then your name comes up. So your one interaction with someone can resonate in a very positive or a very negative way for years to come. And one of the biggest things I think that I should have learned in those instances was, regardless of what job you're doing, how long you've been doing it, or what your goals are, you are literally not in competition with anyone else, full stop. And we have to stop pretending that we're competing with other people. I thought I was competing with others for roles that were open. I didn't realize that just because there's only one role open at any given time, it doesn't mean that in the future that role wouldn't be open again. And that I couldn't build my skill set to be a better equipped for that position when it did come open. I looked at it as, this is my shot, and this other person's trying to take it from me. So I'm going to do everything to lop off their head and then go in for the kill. And that kept me stumbling and falling flat on my face. It wasn't until I got the opportunity to truly be a leader that I realized that every individual, even if they're all in the same role, they want a different experience out of that role. Someone could be a student and all they want to do is be a steady Eddie and have their tuition paid for, and then use that to build tenure in an organization. That way, when they graduate, they can have better opportunities. Another person, they just need a job. They don't care. They're not going to go to school or anything like that. They just need and want a job, and they're happy. They don't care if you think of them as stagnant. They just want to be happy. They don't like change. They just want to be themselves 100% of the time and be okay with that. They two different groups of people. They all want something else. And then there's people like you and me, hungry hippos that want everything and will do anything and everything within reason to get to there. Whether that be networking, pulling, the long shifts, or volunteering to go help out another department and those kinds of things, right? So, and that's all about politics. You decide what's going to happen on your path, and how you can guide the speed of your path is through your communication growth with people. One of the leaders that you and I got to work with in that environment, we'll call her Susan because that's her real name. Phenomenal leader, phenomenal individual. I was in her office one time and we were talking about an opportunity of mine where I said something unknowingly and literally hurt someone's feelings to the core. And when I got to explain to her what my intent was behind that conversation, she realized it was complete exact opposite of what that person took in. And in that moment, she said, Jeremy, I want you to realize something. It doesn't matter how old you are, where you're at in the business. It doesn't matter your title, how much you're getting paid. Every single day of your life, you will have to continue to build on your communication skills. And the only way you're going to become a perfect communicator is by literally meeting every single human being on the planet. And it's just never going to happen because you'll never be able to read people's minds. So just always be in that constant state of how can I make this communication better? And then your communications truly will become better and you'll start seeing the results that you're looking for. And honestly, she's been 100% right, even to this day. And I'll say this confidently, she was very ahead of her time, and I'm pretty sure she still is to this day. And when people share that knowledge, it really does show the importance behind networking. You and I haven't worked together in years, right? But we still know the same people. We still keep up with the same people. Probably the same people that we know will probably watch this video and be like, why is Federico interviewing him, right? But because we're able to use politics appropriately and amicably have conversations with people, we're each getting something out of that relationship. And it's important to build those networks because networking can lead to other opportunities. It's led to opportunities for you. It's led to opportunities for me. I mean, for myself, a perfect example, I just moved out of Arizona into a different state for a whole new job. And I also happened to get, accepted into one of, the best schools I could possibly, I still can't even fathom that I got into the school, right? So it's all about the networking. And through that networking, you're going to learn to compromise because we all have goals, we all have wants, we all have needs. And we have to be real with ourselves, but that we're not always going to get what we want and we will not always get what we need. But there's going to be moments where we can learn to compromise that somewhere down the path, shortly after we make that compromise, or even in that compromise, it will lead to that. And it's because we've used our emotional intelligence and, our politicalness, if you will, to talk to one another, to help build one another. That is what's going to help carry you on to that next thing. And, the last piece about networking that I want to kind of mention is once you have the network, you have to work to maintain it. And what I mean by that is, and I wish a lot of people in our network did this a lot more, but we have to help each other celebrate in each other's successes. Just because I'm not a part of your physical success doesn't mean I'm not proud for you. I'm not proud of you. And that, I don't think you're going to go further. I should always be there as your friend, as someone in your network to applaud you every step of the way. And I'm not saying I should be able to expect that, but because I am showing you that willingness, it may help you, show that same willingness to me. And, and with all these announcements that I've made about like my life changes and whatnot, I've had a lot of people be very supportive. And it's because of that very thing. Either I have said something, of supporting in nature somewhere down the path or whatever the case is, and they happen to see that one moment, but helping each other celebrate the wins, that only builds your network tighter. And when you can go and introduce someone else and say, hey, listen, this guy here, not only is he skilled in such and such, but as a person, he has always been there for me in this environment. He was there for me in this environment. He helped celebrate here for me. So your networking essentially is your unwritten resume because it's actual feedback that people truly have on you based upon their experiences with you that then will resonate to other opportunities. And let's be honest, if that feedback is this person's a jerk, they're always going to interrupt you, they're always going to talk over you, be prepared for this. Your situation is always going to feel the same way, and it's going to suck. And it's because you didn't realize that everything was political. You didn't realize that you can't always get what you want in your way, but you still try. So you have to make that conscious effort to take a step back and not be an early Jeremy and be the strongest talker in the room and say, I know I'm right. You guys decide why. You have to bring everyone with you together. And the only way you can do that is by playing those politics.
And that's a very good point. And mind you, when you speak politics or even that word comes up, a lot of people even get the heebie-jeebies. And for myself, I dislike politics for different reasons, and I don't want to go on tangents, but I'll tell you something. I did have to learn, like you, to be diplomatic. I had to learn diplomacy for many reasons. But one of them was when I realized that a lot of people have hidden agendas. And it is being diplomatic what helps you navigate through those. Because sometimes you don't know exactly what their reason behind the reason is, but you sense or you feel that there's something to it. So you just have to be cautious in what you say, how you say it, and all this this game, so to speak. And you brought an interesting point, especially younger people or immature people or just strong-headed people that have that mentality of, I don't care what people think about me, which is kind of a cool, ribbon or thing to throw out there. Like, I don't care, like, whatever, it doesn't bother me, blah, blah, blah. Well, That goes so far, because the best way I can put it is, if you watch any of those Chappelle shows, where he has that section called Keeping It Real. Yeah, you're trying to be cool and tough and all that, and that's not going to take you in the right direction. And you're not going to be doing anything for the right reasons, because now you're just, puffing out your chest and you have something to prove that I'm too cool and I don't care what people think and blah, blah, blah. Well, sometimes people, it's not what they think, but it's what they're seeing, that you're becoming this person you might not want to be. But since you have something to prove, you are that guy or that gal. And to that point, it's a second step to that, or something I'd like to add. It's important that you're diplomatic, but at some point, you also have to stay true to yourself. Be authentic. Because being diplomatic doesn't mean being a hypocrite or being two-faced or those other things. Sometimes people get that twisted.
Bending over backwards, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's not it. It takes a while. Sometimes you go through that to get to the diplomatic, but still being authentic. And sometimes it's vocabulary, learning how to deal with situations and people and all kind of challenges that might come your way. But it's something to always keep in mind, and a good goal to look forward to. Like, yeah, you have to not only say the right things, but say them in a way that not only doesn't offend people, because that's a thing now, but more than that, that it communicates what you're really trying to say. And, obviously you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but if you can communicate what you really mean, then their feelings shouldn't be hurt if you're coming from the right place. And referrals are golden, because I know I've gotten a lot of jobs because of networking, because of connections. The current job I'm in right now is because of that. And a last point that I wanted to notate on referrals. Let's see, I'm authentic. I keep writing this note so I don't space out, but then once in a while I still do. Yes, one example that I can share of being diplomatic is something we were talking right before we started recording, is this job opportunity that I got offered a couple of years back. And in a nutshell, they offered me a job, but they said something along the lines that, well, you're going to have to move out of state. You know, are you interested? Would that be even a possibility? And if I wasn't diplomatic, like what was coming out of my head, like, go take a hike. Like, I'm not going to move out of state. Are you crazy? Blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I kept that voice, you know, in my inside voice, and I used my diplomatic skills. And I did express, well, you know, currently I'm not looking at moving out of state, but I'm always open to good opportunities. And just that statement there was gold, because I was being authentic. I was telling them, like, I'm not really interested in moving, but if you make it worth my while, or if it's something that's really interesting or a great opportunity, then I'll consider it. And to get there, it took me, I don't know how many years to understand. I wasn't being a hypocrite. I wasn't being any of those things. I was just trying to choose the words in the correct manner that it would express my sentiment and my message, but would still give me the opportunity for having a door open in case that's something I wanted to walk through, right? So, but
exactly.
I'm glad I remember that example. So you're telling us about politics, and then what is the next point? Like,
well, before we move on to the next point, you actually said something that I kind of want to go back and touch on. So,
cool.
And it kind of goes back to what I first said, like the things that you and I are talking about, these aren't things that probably anyone has heard for the first time. And if you have heard these things for the first time, I'm sorry, but I'm glad you're listening today. But like how you mentioned that there's people out there that say, don't pay attention to the negative feedback. They're out there. One of them who, oh, and it looks like you're frozen.
No, I can hear you, but the image is frozen. So if you can hear me, just keep going. Looks like a little bad connection, but hopefully it smooths out. All right, are you back?
Hey, this actually happened to me the other day on Zoom while I was at work. So Zoom, you need to get this fixed, por favor. So before we had our technological issue here, you know, you mentioned that there's people out there that say, don't pay attention to the negative feedback. Okay. One, full disclosure, I used to be one of those individuals. And right now, the biggest name that I think kind of says that to a certain degree is, have you heard of Gary Vee?
Yes.
I like to call myself the brown Gary Vee because I curse just as much as he does. Clearly, I'm showing restraint here, but Gary Vee tells you in his own special way, don't pay attention to the haters. They're always going to be hating. They're always going to be there. I used to have that same mentality. And here's another hip hop quote that kind of helped me change my mind. Actually, it's helped me solidify it. Kanye West. Okay. I say that name, everyone has a certain feeling right now about it, right? But one of his songs, he's got a line that says, "Screams from the haters have a nice ring to it. I guess every superhero needs his theme music." Okay. In that sentence, he says the exact opposite of what Gary Vee says. Gary Vee says, don't listen to it. Kanye is saying, I'm hearing it and I'm processing it, but I'm taking it a completely different way and I am letting it give me power. It wasn't until I had that same epiphany, because I used to be about that braggadocio, right? Just be like, you can't tell me nothing. I am so smart and I know everything, regardless of whether I've been through everything or not. Right? That was who I was. But then I realized I was working harder at things. I was working 10 times harder than what other people were putting in. And I was feeling constantly exhausted. And it wasn't until I realized, dude, you have to have that emotional intelligence to let that feedback not eat away at you inside, but you have to pay attention to what's being said, because how it's being said is telling you the answer on how to make that problem go away. If you can listen to that negative feedback and figure out how to make it go away, that's no longer in your ear anymore. And now you have taken your opportunity and you've turned it into a strength. Now we come back full circle, right? So everything is connected. It's just a matter of processing it in the appropriate orders and making sure that you purposely want to get something out of it. Because if you're just hearing stuff and you're just like, I don't understand why I'm wasting my time with this, then maybe you're looking at things the wrong way.
I know that's a great perspective, because I know there's a lot of followers of different people, influencers or whatever they call the cool kids nowadays. And there's a lot of wisdom in many of them, but the same lesson doesn't necessarily apply to all situations. And that's
Right.
something that I've identified, because we tend to generalize. And if a quote sounds true for one thing, then in our mind, well, that's true for everything. And it might not be the case, right? So before I get all wordy and all that, or space out, I want to make sure that I ask or get your information. I'm not sure if you're in social media. You mentioned you have a business, you help people. How can somebody that's interested in learning, the ways of the force, getting a little bit of direction or your knowledge, or interested in hiring your business or whatever, how can they contact you? You have a website, social media, bat signal. How can we get in touch?
So I actually do most of my communicating with Harry Potter owls. However, in the state of California, keeping the owls indoors is illegal. So right now I'm trying to work through those legalities. So for right now, if someone wanted to get in touch with me, whether it be, for the business, or, just to kick the rocks with me, right now, the best way to get in touch with me is via email. And that's just jagarcia@g.harvard.edu. Shoot me an email any given time, and then after we converse and whatnot, I may give you access to the other stuff that I have out there. That way we can communicate, a little bit more quickly as opposed to asynchronous email. But that's going to be the best way for right now. But yeah, I mean, like I said, these things that I'm kind of talking about, that you and I've talked about, I should say, these aren't really any mind-blowing topics, right? For me, that was a lot of talking that we've just done, but we really only covered 6 topics. There's 2 more things that are super simple that we'll wrap up here, but these things aren't things that require any college degrees. These ideas aren't things that require years worth of learning. Because we have to be honest, a lot of the things that we've learned were in small moments in time in the grand scheme of things. We've worked on projects and may have learned a lesson, but we may have learned that lesson in 35 seconds or a 5-minute time frame, but we've worked on it for, weeks, months, etc. But the last 2 things here that I think help someone be successful is we've talked about things that someone needs to put in and kind of take away. But one of the biggest things that I think that has helped me, especially in my current place in time, is taking a step back and purposely taking a deep breath. And as soon as you're done taking that breath, go find a hobby. Go do something else then what is consuming your life right now? And the reason for that is on several different levels. Again, I do a lot of, excess reading, things that I don't have to read. I love picking up and kind of doing that. And Harvard Business Review recently kind of just came out with this article that basically stated, if you don't feel like you're performing at your top, pull back and get a hobby. And it broke down why that's important. And the reason why is, and it sounds like, well, wait a minute, if I feel like I'm getting stagnant in what I'm doing, why am I going to go do something else and not get paid to do it? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. Again, it's about that learning process, because through these activities, whether it's painting, whether it's, being an astronomer, or, looking for aliens or anything like that, whatever it's at on the spectrum, there are things that you're going to be doing while partaking in that hobby or that activity that, if you actually thought outside the box, may help you with an obstacle inside of the workplace. Also, another flip side is, let's just say you decide hiking is going to be your thing. Well, guess what? If you're someone who's highly stressed out, and we've all seen this during COVID, but there are plenty of studies out there that show when someone has access to just the imagery of nature, just imagery, their stress levels come down. When they're surrounded by nature, their stress levels go down even further. And then when they're taking care of nature, like plants, and let's be honest, we're all barely coming out of quarantine, but we all have like 95 plants that we didn't have from the start, right? We brought those plants in because something inside of us said, this makes me feel better. Being out in nature has scientifically, and I don't want to use the word proven, but has scientifically shown significant results in lowering stress when someone is engulfed in nature. So taking the time to go breathe and do something else is going to help calm your psyche and allow it to soak other bits of pieces of information in. So you continuously do that learning. So, taking a break and just taking a breather, super important. And the last thing that's a super easy topic, just have fun. When we have worked in jobs that we didn't like, everyone knew. We may not have said, this job sucks, or my boss sucks, but our actions, our words, our physical expressions, our facial expressions all showed discontent. It showed how unhappy we were. When you are somewhere purposely, your attitude has already been chosen, and you're willing to be in that moment. Because you're willing to be in that moment, your confidence is at its highest levels. You know the goals that you have, and you are so confident on how you're going to work toward those goals. But you're also confident that as you're working towards those goals with that open-mindedness that you're having, because you're having fun, you know that if you hit a roadblock, it's going to be like water on a duck's back. It's just going to fall right off, and you're going to be so resilient, and you're going to be like, okay, here's where we had the mistake. How can we get past it? And you're going to do that very quickly. And you're going to do that by getting other people's advice, because you're communicating from a happy place, and you're being political, and you're being diplomatic, and you're communicating in such a way that makes them want to help, because they know that there's something in it for them as well. So being happy and choosing that mindset and doing your best to stay in that mindset is one of the best decisions that someone can make for themselves if they truly do want to be, successful. And I guess with me saying it that way, let me kind of just say it differently. Everything that we've talked about is all fine and dandy, right? We can put whatever garnish we want on this plate and call it a $400 entree. But here's the thing. Someone has to make that conscious decision to eat that entree. If you don't want to go about something, don't waste your time. Don't waste anyone else's time. Go and do whatever is going to make you happy. And in those moments where you're starting to feel stagnant, then come back and revisit this video and see what you can pick up and try to move forward with. But you have to make that decision. If you want to be successful, you have to come to grips that you have to act. You have to sacrifice. You have to negotiate. You have to compromise. And you've got to be diplomatic. You've got to choose to do all those things. Because if you choose not to, again, if you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail.
I like how you came back to that, because that's a great quote. And something that you mentioned actually just is right down my alley as the tree hugger that I am. I know, I feel, I believe that we as humans, we come from nature. Like that's where we spawned, appeared, or whatnot. Like even when God created us, He created us from nature, right? From from dirt. So we tend to isolate ourselves in these little artificial bubbles, offices or homes, especially like I'm in Arizona. The other day it was like 120. So people tend to lock themselves in their AC, whether it's the office, the house, the car, and isolate ourselves from nature to a point. But that's just kind of a mental thing, because we're never disconnected from nature. We're always part of it. Like if it weren't for nature, we wouldn't be alive. Everything, every day, all the oxygen we breathe, well, guess what? It comes from the trees and from nature. The sun that helps us assimilate vitamin D and gives us energy, that's nature. So we can try to fool ourselves thinking that we're isolated and we're living this artificial environment, but we are never separated. So I really like that statement that you said, to reconnect with nature, because we're never disconnected, but mentally we're kind of zoned out and we're not tapping into just that energy and that potential and just that healing power and just that even calmness. When you're all stressed out, you go and even throw some rocks in the lake, try to make them skip. Just doing that, or having a plant in your house, a pet, or sometimes it's as silly as sometimes I'm like washing dishes and I see this little hummingbird hanging out and eating or drinking the hummingbird nectar that I put out there. That just fulfills my heart. It sounds corny and tree huggery, but it's true. And if the studies that you shared mention that just by looking at images of nature, that immediately changes your attitude and your well-being, we should make some time for nature, not just, I happen to have a flat, so now I'm dealing with nature. No, let's actually actively make some time for it, because it's part of who we are. And if it has all these benefits, like why wouldn't we want to? And the other thing is, I like to maybe engulf it in this quote, something that you just mentioned as well. I like to have the perspective, and the quote, I'll butcher it, but it's, we should work to live and not live to work. Mm-hmm. And it's a big difference, because when you just live to work, you're not really living, you're just working. And that's not necessarily life. I don't care how much you love your job. If it's just work for you, that's not fulfilling. There's no satisfaction. It's not going to be the best that you can experience, or that the best thing that you can do with your life. But mind you, we have bills to pay. We live in this material world and economics, and it's so complicated. So, most of us need a day job or some way, some work, whatever it might be. But when you go and work, just so that that can support your lifestyle and your goals and your family or whatever stage in your life or whatever you aspire, then that's different because
Right.
there's even a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment when it's no longer just a job, but now it's a career. It's something that you enjoy and it helps you grow, not only financially, but also spiritually, emotionally, mentally, humanly, in humanity, however, whatever the word is,
Right.
because you start learning more about interacting with others. And if you have that empathy and you can relate to people, you start realizing that a lot of people are just like us. And sometimes we think they're completely different, but no, like we all breathe the same air. We all need water and we all have our dreams and goals and our hurts and our fears. They may be different, but we all go through to some extent through those. And at the end of the day, like I said, the tree hugger in me, I want to make a positive impact in the world, however small or however big, and anything that I can do that can make this world a better place. Like I'm all for it. I'm excited not just for me and for my family, but for even strangers. If there's something that could benefit and help people continue being good people, if there's such a thing, I'm all for it. And that's one of the reasons why I have this channel as well. And I'm always very thankful when people like yourself come in and bring like some knowledge and some different perspectives, because like I'm all fired up and passionate about all these topics with you, and also bringing memories and revisiting a lot of lessons learned. So like, I'm super excited. I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to interview and have this little chat. Also, I always like to ask my guests if there is one thing that you like the audience to have like a takeaway. If everything else was noise, like I can't retain all that. I'll have to come rewatch it, whatever. The one takeaway to drive home, if nothing else, what would you think, or what would you like the audience or the person that's watching this to really capture or hone in and not forget?
So I think you actually just touched on it, and I'll say it a different way with one last hip hop quote. And this one's a little unfortunate because it's from a Canadian. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but Drake, he's a rapper. In a song, he says, "Everybody dies, but not everybody lives." And like when you think about that, and you kind of summed it up perfectly, these things that we've talked about, like we said at the beginning of this conversation, these are things that you've already heard before. But this time you've heard it from someone differently. And hopefully I said it in such a way that resonated. But essentially, these are things that I had to experience. I had to learn. I had to go through. In every industry that I've been in, these things remain a constant, but they're constantly changing. These are things that you have to really put your best foot forward and pay attention to and maintain these things. This isn't a set it and forget it type of thing. And if you really want to get yourself to a point where it feels like you're not just trying to keep your head above water and you want to thrive, you got to figure out how to make these things work for me. That's the one piece that I would say, if anyone wants to take one little tidbit away from this, make these 8 points work for you. If you figure out the recipe that works for you, hopefully your life should get a little easier, because this is how you work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I love that. And mind you mentioned the 8 points. You went over them thoroughly, which I think in very easy to understand examples. But I like to recap them just so we have them all together. And I have them in front of me. I can read them, or if you want to tell us what those are, it's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I called them my easy ocho just because, I like saying things differently. So number 1 is confidence. No one's going to believe in you unless you believe in yourself. Number 2, you got to learn to love the failure. falling flat on your face is A-okay. No one's going to be upset with you for failing. People are going to be upset with you for failing and staying there. Next, always be a continuous learner. Refuse to be stagnant. It doesn't matter what you're learning. Just keep doing it. Okay? Next, expect the unexpected. Stuff is going to happen. And it's going to happen when you least expect it. Be ready to pivot. Then set goals, short-term, long-term, work towards them. Once you obtain the goals, create more goals. Don't just say, I am done. Create new things to work towards, because that's how you keep keeping it fresh. And if you do that, it's never going to go bad. Another hip-hop quote from Common. Then, again, everything is politics. Stop pretending that it's not. Every relationship that you have to watch what you say and do. And if you don't feel like you have to watch and say and do, the strength of those relationships probably isn't that great, but that's just my opinion. Next, breathe, get a hobby, go become one with nature, take some time to just be yourself, and then have fun the entire step of the way.
Awesome. And you did it marvelously, better than if I would have read them. Jeremy, first of all, I want to thank you for being on my channel. I really believe that through you, we can reach people and hopefully give them enough information that can get them through a hurdle or help them reach a goal or overcome that giant that's in front of them, whatever it may be, whether it's unemployment, poor self-esteem, stress. We're all dealing with different situations, but information here can help many different scenarios. So I'm really excited. And above all, man, I'm so excited to connect with you. We haven't really talked forever, it feels like. And what comes to mind, like we have to hang out at some point. I don't know how, because you're now, in California. I'm over here in Phoenix, but we have to make it happen. And the only thing that comes to my mind is tamales. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely, man. One, it's an honor that you asked me to do this here with you. I know exactly what you're trying to do, how you're trying to reach out to people, and honestly, it's a huge honor to help with that. Again, if anyone wants to reach out to me in particular and kind of wants to continue the conversation, best way to do so is my email. That's jagarcia@g.harvard.edu. And also, for yourself, sir, this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. You and I had talking about other different things, other different topics. Totally down to do that with you, man. This was super fun. Anytime that you want to do this, let me know, brother. I'll be there for you. And yeah, next time I'm in Phoenix or you're in the Bay Area, man, we gotta link up and we gotta do the damn thing. Eat some tamales.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that we live in a life and time where there isn't a taco truck on every corner when we were this close, but at least we can get a good tamale somewhere together, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then love you lots. I'm very thankful for your friendship, and I want to say it publicly. You've seen me in my darkest hours, and you've been there for me as a friend and supporting me. So I have nothing but gratitude for you, and you'll always be in my heart. So thank you for being my friend, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with me and with the audience. And I look forward to chatting with you again.
Absolutely, man. And same to you. You've been there for all of my ups and downs. So I thank you as well. And again, this is a great example of networking. You got to maintain those relationships because it does pay off when you nurture them. So yeah, you're very welcome, man. Until the next time.
Iron sharpens iron. And with that, a big Fede hug to you, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you again for being on my show, man.
All right, man. May the force be with you.
And with you always.